Okay, so let's talk about an accountability protocol, one that's actually going to help you guys get closer to your goals and not continue to get frustrated, burnt out, and feel like you're spinning your wheels. Now, the reason we put this accountability protocol together is to make sure before you set up your accountability plan and before you have your accountability partner, we need to make sure that your accountability actually has 4 key components before we can succeed with accountability. My name's Kate Simon, and I lead coaches, CEOs, entrepreneurs all over the country so that they can maximize their personal potential to hit their goals. Now, the reason that we have key components of accountability is because we've seen a lot of clients in the past that set goals and they work really hard to be held accountable to something that ultimately doesn't work in their favor, and it's because they're not keeping these 4 points in mind. So now keep in mind that all 4 of these points are important in any accountability protocol, meaning all 4 of them should be present. This is not a pick which one you like most or do half of them. All 4 of these need to be present in order for accountability to be successful. So let's go ahead and get into it. So point number 1 is clarity. Now, this probably sounds like a no-brainer to you guys, but really we need to be super crystal clear about what our goals are and what's actually on the other side of accountability. Otherwise, let's be real, accountability in and of itself is not fun. So we have to have clarity around why we need accountability and more specifically, what the accountability is going to do for us once we get through that accountability plan. So point number 1 is clarity. Make sure you're super crystal clear on what it is that the accountability is going to do for you. Number 2, we need to make sure that we are tracking the right metrics. Now, how I put this with my clients is making sure that the metrics they're tracking in accountability are metrics that they can control. Now, here's what this looks like. Instead of saying that you want to be held accountable for putting 10 deals together in the month of July, we build an accountability protocol around the actions or activities we know that individual needs to be doing in order to have the best chance of putting 10 deals together in the month of July. Now, it's important that we understand the difference there. One of those metrics we can control and own. The other metric is a result of something else. Whether or not the client puts 10 deals together or not has a lot of other people involved to make that decision, such as the 10 clients that choose to work with that particular person. And there can be a variety of reasons why deals come together or don't come together, but as coaches and as leaders, the only thing that we can control in our people and encourage them to double down on are the thoughts, the habits, the behaviors that we know are going to work for them and will lead to the success that they're working on the back end. Now, the next point here, this is point number 3 in making sure that we're putting together a bulletproof accountability protocol, is to make sure that there is some sort of pain point or consequence in place if we're not doing whatever it is that we decided in point number 2 are our daily non-negotiables. We have a theory here, okay? Now, you could either work towards pleasure, right? Something that you want to do, a trip that you want to take, a car that you want to buy, a watch that you've had your eye on. Like, we could work towards that, or you can work away from pain. And in my coaching, in my leadership, I've had way more success motivating people away from pain than towards pleasure. Now, by the way, the reason for that is if you really think about what's going to get you moving, if you think about something you want to do once you hit your goal, the worst case scenario of you not hitting your goal is actually things staying exactly the way that they are right now. And for a lot of us, praise God, it's not a bad situation, right? It's like our day-to-day life is not so dire that it would be a pain point for us to not go to Hawaii or to not buy that watch or to not buy that car. Do you guys see what I'm saying there? Now, when we're working away from pain, there is a consequence that will be imposed by our accountability partner if we don't show up and do the job that we say we're going to do, which again, we've outlined in point number 2. Now, a lot of you are going to be a little bit surprised, and this might make you uncomfortable, but my favorite pain point is always a financial pain point, okay? Now, there's a couple different ways in which we flush out with a given person or a given client what that right number is for an individual. And believe me when I say it's different for everybody. So I'll give you an example. A lot of you guys are here right now because you know my leader, my mentor, my coach, Jeff. Him and I have a really close relationship. He's coached me all throughout my career. And at this particular time, he reached out to me asking for fitness accountability help. Now, this was a couple years ago. This was pre-COVID. This was 2019. He said, Kate, I have 60 days that I want to get in really good shape and I want you to hold me accountable. So we came up with the clarity around it. We came up with the metrics that he needed to do, which was 1 30-minute ride, 5 days a week. And then we came up with the pain point. Now, when we got to the point of discovering the pain point, I had asked him the question of, hey Jeff, if you don't hit this metric, if you don't hit 5 a week, what is that going to be worth to you? And he said to me, it'll be $100. And I said, no way. That was way too easy of an answer, which tells me it's not strong enough of a pain point. So I said, what about $250? And he's like, no way. No, I'm not going to put $250 on the line. And that's when I knew, by the way, that's when I knew that was the right accountability metric for him, because he wasn't immediately ready to agree to it. So as you're building your accountability protocol with your people, expect that the first number they give you is actually the number they would be okay with paying you if they didn't do their job. Now, we're not trying to make people go broke here, right? We want them to show up and do their job, and we want them to be honest about their efforts. But it does need to be painful enough where you're gonna get on that bike at 11:30 at night, which Jeff did plenty of times, and you're gonna ride those 30 minutes because you don't want that clock to hit midnight without you doing your job. That's the kind of accountability that we have to play with our people. Now, if you put this protocol in place and you notice that the people you're holding accountable or the individual is not having an issue writing that check or sending you that money, it's not a strong enough accountability protocol. Now, I have one more rule around this, and this is that I am not an adult babysitter. Now, what this means is if you're asking for my accountability, I need a check in hand or I need money in hand in order to hold you accountable. Otherwise, it's no deal. Because what happens is if I rely on them to send me the check or send me the Venmo after they don't do their job, that's when the negotiation starts. That's when the hemming and hawing starts. And listen, I'm in the business to help you become the best person you can. I'm not in the business to babysit. So the rules that I have with people before I hold them accountable is they have to have money on the line before the accountability even starts. Now, if they're going to do their job, there should be no problem with that check sitting on my desk never being cashed. So when we're working on putting together a pain point, specifically a financial pain point, work with it a little bit with your client to make sure that you guys have really identified the right number and the right pain point for them that would cause them to get out of bed at 11:30 at night and ride their Peloton because they don't want to Venmo Kate Simon $250. Okay guys, number 4, the last point here in developing a strong accountability protocol is actually have a duration of time in which this accountability protocol is taking place. Now, this could be 30 days, this could be 60 days, it could be 90 days, it could be a whole year. In my coaching experience, the most success I've had is with a 30-day accountability protocol with my clients. And the reason for that is there's only so much that a client can do to stay on track and really push themselves to their limit day in and day out. Now, I've had clients who succeed with this for 60 to 90 days, but in my experience, and again, guys, I've coached, over 8,000 hours of entrepreneurs, coaches, leaders, executives, I usually find between day 75 and 90 that things get a little bit shaky, things get a little bit less consistent because they're fatigued. There's an actual thing that happens when people are stretching themselves to a limit that they've never been to before, where they can only hold that level of performance for so long. So you guys will know this analogy if you've ever done like track or field when you're in high school or middle school. It's like when you're running a 200 or a 400 or even, a half marathon, doesn't matter. There's certain periods of the race where you're pacing and then there's certain periods where you're pushing to make headway. And so when we look at this accountability protocol, what I really want it to be looked at as is like a sprint. Like this pace that we're holding you accountable to should not really be something you can maintain 12 months out of the year. Otherwise, it's not really challenging us enough, right? So pick a duration of time that you're willing to be all in on this accountability protocol. And then once the 30 days is up, if you have clients that typically want to still continue on and they still want to be held accountable, that's okay. But what I'd encourage you to do as the coach and leader is to give it a couple days. I always tell my clients, shake it off, air it off, have a day where you're off track so that when you get back on the next accountability protocol, you're getting back to it with a fresh mindset and you are ready to go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Those are the 4 key points to make sure you guys have in place before you build any sort of accountability protocol. Make sure you comment below your favorite point that you heard today and make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you stay up to date on all things personal development development and all things leadership. Thank you guys so much. See you at the next one.